Hey friends, and welcome to this week where we are tackling chapter 9 in the series Parables for Precious People. My name is Pastor Dan Paddock of the Vine Grove United Methodist Church, and I also pastor a second campus church called High Ground United Methodist Church. And it's really good to be with you today, where I woke up very early this morning to go do workouts in my gym, and I thought that I would give you a little taste of part of my life so that you can understand some of the important lessons of chapter 9. Because chapter 9 is about talking about the parable of the rich fool. And the reason why he was a fool was because he kept storing more and more and more things, and he really didn't have a plan for those things, except for that it was an opportunity to brag to the rest of his community that he had all those things. And, it's interesting because 20 centuries later, the world struggles with that more than ever in the history of humankind. We struggle with things that aren't our own, or we struggle with things thinking they should be our own without regard for the people around us. And at some point, some of those things become vanity, or some of those things make us feel arrogant or boastful. And when that happens, if we're not careful, it can really cause us problems. So here's something interesting. As I research life in Kenya and research life in the United States, one of the things that I find very interesting is that in Kenya and Ethiopia and Somalia, distance running is a very strong sport. So people would learn to run long distances and do so fast. So it is not uncommon for people in Kenya or Ethiopia or Somalia to win marathon races or very long distance running. That is a real gift for a lot of people in this part of Africa. Whereas for me, and part of the culture in the United States is we do weightlifting and we do strength training and different things. And but here's the important lesson in all this. Now I'm going to show you that not that long ago I got a medal for weightlifting, and I loved to lift weights. In fact, my expertise is lifting a giant log and placing it over my head. And I've been one of the best in my entire region of this part of the United States in that. And part of me is really proud of that. Well, if I'm not careful, I can be like the rich fool on this. Because my job or my goal was I wanted to be the strongest person at lifting the log. And to this day, I still do log lifts. But I discovered some important things that in my life. And that is that in all of my weightlifting and in my sometimes not so good healthy food diet, that my heart was getting some blockages. And those blockages were getting to the point to where I was very close to having a heart attack. So in all the work I was trying to do to be strong, I was actually hurting my heart and didn't realize it. Now, I hope you could see a similarity between this and the parable of the rich fool. The parable of the rich fool, the man had all of these things and just assumed he was going to have his life, and he took it for granted. And he also took for granted that he could have more things so that he could brag about how wealthy he was or how secure he thought he was. In my own life, I've struggled with the fact that I wanted to be one of the strongest people around. And so I would do a whole lot of weightlifting. But while I would do all that weightlifting, guess what's happening in my life? I have worries in my heart. And of course, as I'm getting a little bit older here, I'm getting near 50 years of age, and so it's harder and harder to do those things. And at some point, what I have to do is, and had to do, is transition from the super heavy lifting to better taking care of what God has given me. Because if I do that well, then I have a chance to live longer. And if I can live longer, hopefully I can bless more people's lives. So in fact, I kind of am envious of people in Kenya, East Africa especially, because in the running, and the running really, really well, you actually build a very strong and healthy heart. And as someone who has a little bit of disease in my heart, it's really neat to see people really not just compete well, but really have healthy hearts that can help them live for hopefully a very, very long time. And so, why is all of this important? Well, I don't think that God is upset if we try to be our best. And I don't even think that God is upset if we have friendly competitions. But if those competitions cause us to be too greedy, too selfish, or too arrogant, where we're not humble, and we're not nice to people, and we're not helping people, then maybe we become like the rich fool. And that's really sad, because the world can really benefit when people who are gifted in their mind, or if they're gifted in their heart, or if they're gifted in their hands, or they're gifted in work, or maybe they're gifted in business, that these people could not just be successful for their personal sake, but be successful for the world around them. And I think that's when our world becomes a much stronger and much better place. So in the parable of the rich fool, what could the wealthy man have done differently? Well, let's look at the big silos that he had. He already had big silos that could store grain for years and years and years for his needs. Nothing wrong with storing some grain so that you can eat tomorrow. But why would you store grain that you could eat for 8, 10, 12 years and then tear those barns down and build bigger ones when you aren't going to be able to eat all the grain that you have in those barns to begin with? I think in those instances, then that's when you do a combination. Maybe you sell grain. Maybe you invest some of that grain. Maybe you, out of generosity, which I think this is what I love, the generosity of being able to give away that grain. All these things are possibilities. But while he would have had a right to sell his grain, I think the key issue is two important lessons. Number one, never assume and take for granted your life here on earth, because we never know when it may end. Always be grateful for the breath that you have. So important. Be grateful for the breath you have and the food that you have to eat, and give thanks to our Father on high for all that he gives us. That's number one. Number two, very, very important lesson as well, is when you are blessed, seek to be a blessing. So this man was extremely blessed with lots of grain, right? But how could he have been a blessing? And the more we're able to do that, the more I think God's family benefits, and he benefits too. So many, many gifts. And finally, remember that the ultimate reward that we have will not be on this earth. It will not be on this earth. There is no medal for running a marathon or lifting weights. There is no trophy in life on earth that is better than the great, great reward we'll get to live in heaven and be with Jesus forever. So never forget that. That should be our great incentive. Do not store up for yourself treasures here on earth, but store for yourself treasures in heaven. The moths can't kill, the rust will not erode, no one, robbers, they can't steal the gifts that you have in heaven. Those will be yours forever. So, well, thanks so much for listening here today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. God blessings to you, the First United Methodist Church, Kisii, Kenya, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.